Are we headed for a government shutdown? Which way is it leaning? Will enough Democrats decide to vote with Republicans? We're going to go digging deep on that one. That's coming up as Nonstop News at 5 continues, presented by my Lemon Law Lawyer. Text Lemon at 40333 for a free case review. Well, the mass layoffs of federal employees have caused a lot of turmoil in Washington and across the country. Trump administration says it's all part of a drive to make government more efficient, cut waste. At 6 o'clock tonight, less than an hour from now, Mike Simpson hosts the KNX in-depth special, Fired Feds, Voices of the Government Layoffs. He's going to talk to local people who are now former federal employees. Joining us more for the wider impact is Ian Williamson, who is the dean of the Paul Merage School of Business at UC Irvine, also a globally recognized expert in human resource management and organizational leadership. Man, that's a mouthful. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
So what do you make of the way these layoffs have been managed so far? On one hand, Trump administration claimed it was due to these workers not being very good at their jobs.
Well, I don't think we have any clear indications as to what that actually means. So not good at their job is not a clear articulation of performance evaluation in my assessment. I think it's been chaotic. But I think the bigger story, if we're just thinking about the government's operations, is what is the end game in place? So this doesn't have a clear aim. If the goal is for the government to provide these services to the public, what is the goal? How will the administration allow that to actually happen at a high level or even a higher level of quality than what was currently being done? That's the unknown question.
They say that this is going to make government operate a lot more efficiently if you get rid of all of these workers and cut out some of these departments. Will it?
So we don't have any evidence of layoffs in and of themselves making any organization more efficient. Certainly what it will do is it will reduce costs potentially in the short term. But for it to be more effective, it had to bring in some new capability that allowed citizens, because that is who the government serves, they allow citizens to get their services at a better level. Well, what services will we now receive? How will that be done? What new skills will the government bring into its workforce, and how will that be achieved? None of those are things that have been answered thus far by the administration. And I think if you think about any organization that's going through a layoff, that's a pretty big decision, because what you're saying is we're taking the resource, our people, and we're exiting them. And as best I can tell, most of what the government provides is the expertise of the people that work there. And so if you're taking them out and you're saying, well, we no longer need that expertise, then by definition, you typically are saying, well, we're no longer in the business of providing that service, in this case, to our citizens. And so that's the part that is not very clear in the strategy the administration has adopted thus far.
Now, just a moment ago, I had a news story about FEMA. For the wildfire recovery here in Southern California, they are looking for temporary workers to join them from the area to help them in that effort to recover from the fires. But given that also on the same day, we are still talking about mass layoffs of the federal government, can you imagine somebody wanting a temporary job with essentially the federal government in light of all this going on right now?
Well, they probably would be thinking of it as temporary.
Very temporary, yeah.
Listen, there's a thing we talk about, which is employer brand. And, it's the perception that an organization has in the workplace by employees that would say, is this an organization that would excite me, that I would feel a high level of commitment to? Will I be treated fairly? Will due process? Do I see opportunities for growth? And to the extent the answer is yes, the talented people in our workforce are more likely to want to pursue opportunities to work at that organization, especially because those are the people that have the most choices. And if you want to be the employer of choice, you want to have a great employer brand. Certainly, the actions thus far are likely to reduce the employer brand of the federal government as an employer. Not necessarily because the work is more or less engaging, but more because people would go, well, is it being done fairly? Do I have a sense of voice? Do I have a sense of security? What's the broader aim? To some extent, the workforce has been slightly demonized in the public because of how this is done. So will I have a positive reputation with my community, with my family, with this organization? So I think the government going forward, if it wants to attract the top talent, which I hope it does, because that benefits us as a society, we'll really need to do some damage control over what the employer brand is for the talented people in society that want to work and support the U.S. people in this capacity.
All right. Thanks so much. It's Ian Williamson with UC Irvine. Thank you for taking the time with us today.
My pleasure.
And don't forget, coming up at 6 o'clock, Mike Simpson going to be here hosting a KNX in-depth special called Fired Feds, Voices of the Government Layoffs. Going to hear from some of the people who are actually going through this right now.